Hey, Liberty North AP Psych. Welcome to live stream number 2. It's Wednesday, April 22nd. Again, today we are going to start your lab for chapter 16-17, first part of it, which is your psych disorder chart. Okay, so basically your labs and learning targets will be pretty simple from this point forward because we'll have them all labeled on the chart. So, and then the chart you will turn in both parts for your lab grade for chapter 16-17. So each day we're going to cover a certain amount of disorders, probably 3 at the most, but most days probably 2, and then we'll put them in this chart together. So I'm going to go ahead and wait a few minutes, or we'll just wait a couple more seconds before I go. So if you want to get out a sheet of paper, and then designate this as your psych disorder chart. And we're gonna cover about 15 disorders. So it's probably gonna take up one side and probably the other side. Usually it's about 2 pages. So if you want to designate that space, and again, every disorder that we talk about will be in the first part of the chart, and we'll take notes over the category, the symptoms, the causes, psychotic, neurotic, and then we're gonna go back and put treatments in at the end. Okay, so there'll be a lot of information at the chart, but it'll be easy. It's easier to keep track of information as we talk through it. And then also what I'll have is some great videos that we'll cover that I would normally show in class. I'm going to put them on the assignment link in Canvas. So after you have chapter 16-17 assignments that are due, down below that there's a bunch of videos. And I haven't published that yet, but I'm loading those today. And making sure I have, and most of them are movie trailer clips or really great news stories locally, or everything that relate to the disorders that we talk about. Okay, so your chart, sorry, let me get up here. Okay, so you're gonna label it psych disorder chart. Okay, and you're gonna have 6 columns, if you will. Name of the disorder, category, symptoms, causes, psychotic and neurotic, and then treatments down there at the end. Okay. And then what we'll do is, then we'll number them as you see that I have numbered. So the first 3 today are generalized anxiety disorder, panic disorder, and specific phobia. And don't worry about filling out the information right now. What we'll do is I'll go over the information, and then I'll actually do a close-up of each disorder again to make sure that you have the information. And then I'll do a close-up and put this on Twitter as well, okay? So just get your chart done right now. Okay, name of disorder, category, symptoms, causes, psychotic versus neurotic, and treatments. Okay? And then just make yourself some long columns like I have there. Okay, and then I'll go over each one, and then after I finish each one, usually I'll do a close-up of it so you can kind of review it, and we'll just review it together. All right, so what we're going to do today is we're going to start with anxiety disorders. So again, we talked about the DSM-5 classifies the disorders. It organizes them by categories, okay? And so every disorder fits in a certain category, all right? So the 3 today that we're gonna cover fit in the category of anxiety disorder, okay? And also these are learning target number 8, which I had there under category, okay? So these will answer your learning target number 8. So label them in the category which learning target that they cover. That way you don't have to duplicate. You do not have to do these again. So you only really need to do 1 through 5, which were from the notes yesterday, and then 6, 7, 9 are all going to be from the chart, okay, which you do not need to write over again or duplicate. Just they're in the chart, okay? And then 10 through 15 or 10 through 17 are the next chapter. And some of those will be on the treatment chart as well. So just make sure we label them. But we'll go back over and do that as well. Okay. So Learning targets 6 through 9 are going to be in this chart, okay? And probably actually other ones as well. So the chart's mainly going to take up your learning targets, okay? All right. Okay, so yeah, I think the most diagnosed disorders in America, and it's probably going to be close throughout the world, are anxiety disorders. So they're going to be of this category. So there's going to be, one of them, the phobias, which we talk about, you're definitely going to be able to know and hear. And then Ptsd and Obsessive-Compulsive, which are kind of in their own, they're under anxiety disorders, but they're in their own subgroup, if you will. And we'll talk about them tomorrow, okay? All right, the first one is generalized anxiety disorder, okay? So GAD, number 1, generalized anxiety disorder, GAD, okay? All right, this is, most people call this the severest anxiety disorder that we can diagnose. Now, none of them are fun. All of them are extremely impactful and can devastate one's life. And all of them have, the terrible symptoms of anxiety. But this one, it's pretty much constant. And that's pretty much your day, your way of life. People oftentimes compare generalized anxiety disorder to major depressive disorder. Major depressive disorder is the kind of the pinnacle of the depressive disorders, in which you're depressed almost all the time. I mean, that's your normal state, is depression. Okay. Generalized anxiety disorder is kind of the same analogy. Your normal state is anxiety and panic and fear. So where you and I are normal, in other words, we don't feel anxiety, and then if something makes us anxious, we feel anxious, and then we're able to go back to normal. Okay, these people, it's completely the opposite. They are full of fear and panic and anxiety all the time, the physical and the psychological symptoms. And then they might have a few moments of normalcy where there's not that, and it's not overcoming their life, okay? So it is an anxiety disorder. This is AP learning target number 8. Okay, symptoms. Okay, first of all, one of the main symptoms that you have to have, I have it underlined in all 3, is a panic attack. Okay, so one of the first things that separates an anxiety disorder from a severe fear is that you have a huge physiological body reaction to the fear. Okay, so it takes on a huge physical form, and the DSM-5 actually has the specific symptoms qualifiers for you to be diagnosed with a panic attack. Now, panic attack is not a disorder. It's the main symptom of anxiety disorders, but you have to have a panic attack. Now, just because you have a panic attack doesn't mean that you get diagnosed with a disorder, as I know that many of you have had experienced anxiety attacks or panic attacks, and you can have multiple and still not be diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. But it is one factor, one qualification that has to be there, okay? And that they are very, very frequent. And they're very much a part of the individual's life who has a disorder, okay? So you may have had multiple panic attacks, but they're not just constantly and always occurring, which is kind of what's happening here, okay? Now, again, want to make sure that, I have physical and mental. So make sure you know that with anxiety, it is very physical, right? You feel anxiety, and it is a sickening, painful feeling. It is not fun. So besides being mental and psychological, you can feel it affecting your brain, but it also takes on a very physical form, kind of like an illness, like you feel when you're sick in your body. So very unpleasant. Okay, so the first one is panic attack. The second, kind of just general, is a constant state of panic and fear, and it's physical and mental. Okay, so again, these people's normal daily state is anxiety, fear, and panic. That's just their normal. I mean, if you were to describe these people in your life, you'd say, well, they're very anxious. They're always afraid. I mean, that's just their normal homeostasis. We've talked about that before. That's just their normal kind of behavior and thought processes. It's all engulfed in fear and anxiety. Okay. Now, I had a professor when I was training to be in the clinical field explain it to us like this. Actually, he was a clinician, and he came and he said, we all have a natural fear response ingrained in our brain and our bodies, right? Our amygdala is the brain structure, and we all have neural networks that come alive and kind of keep us safe when we're afraid or threatened. And that goes into our nervous system, our hormones, our endocrine system, and so on and so forth. And it's supposed to be like a light switch. It's like the light's off normally, but then when we are afraid or we're threatened or we have anxiety, the light flips on, the switch goes on, and then we have our fear response. And then once the threat's over, the light switch goes back off, and then we're back to homeostasis, normal. Okay, that's the way it's supposed to work physiologically in our body. With these people, the light switch is always on. It never goes off. So they are in a constantly state of fear response, physically and mentally. Okay, so you can see how draining that would be, how much trouble you'd have sleeping. I mean, it just would begin to inundate and take over every part of your existence and every day of your life, which is kind of what happens here. All right. So it's when that amygdala does not activate the fear response in a correct manner. It just leaves it on. And it's just always, the body's always in a state of fear and panic. Okay. So this is biological, right? The cause is biological. So that fear response that we all have, it's all a part of our existence and a part of our brain, nervous central and peripheral nervous system, does not work correct. It's malfunctioning. Okay, so it's basically just staying on the entire time. Okay, this is neurotic because it is it's a disorder based on fear and anxiety. Okay, all right. So go back over this one. Okay, so generalized anxiety disorder. It is an anxiety disorder. This is learning target number 8. Okay. Primary symptom is panic attack. Have to have one, or in this case, multiple. Okay. And then a constant state of panic and fear, physical and mental. Okay. It is biological. That natural fear response that we had does not work. It's left on all the time, and it is neurotic. Okay. At the basis is neurosis. Okay. All right. Now, the second one is called panic disorder. A lot of times these two are kind of confused. But hopefully, if I do a good enough job today, hopefully you'll understand the difference of them. Now, again, if you've never encountered a panic attack, I mean, again, if we've never experienced physical and mental or psychological anxiety, then it's hard to relate to these disorders, which I think is a good thing, because I think that most people who experience anxiety would not wish it upon anybody else. It's a pretty miserable experience. So, I think that's a good thing, but hopefully you can kind of glimpse a little bit of what it's like. Okay, so panic disorder, okay, which is anxiety. This is AP learning target number 8 as well. Okay, you have to have a panic attack, okay, as one of the core symptoms. Now, what begins to happen here is they have random panic attacks without a stimulus, okay? Unpredictable at okay. So what begins to happen with panic disorder is that people, they just automatically start slipping into these panic attacks. So they have them without a stimulus. So they are random, they're unpredictable, and they just kind of kick into this huge physiological response to fear. Most of the time, they're not thinking fear the first time, but they are just basically knocked off their feet by the panic attack, which again, panic attacks are very distressful, painful experiences and physical. So, if you had one, you would definitely want to do everything you could to avoid it. So, these panic attacks begin to just pop up. And what happens is they begin to associate the panic attack, classical conditioning, with, I was at the grocery store when I had this one. I was at the gas station when I had this one. And they don't go to those places anymore. And they slowly just begin to kind of cave in and just kind of are basically only go to safe. Okay, so it's very similar to, it can lead to agoraphobia, which is the fear of open spaces. Okay, so now this one is also very biological. Now, you can use the same light switch analogy that we use for generalized anxiety disorder with panic attack. Okay, so again, normally the light switch is off. We come into contact with something that's threatened us, or we're anxious about something, the light switch kicks on until the fear is removed, and then it clicks off. Okay, so in GAD, the light switch is always on. With panic disorder, the light switch is going on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off all the time. So panic attack, panic attack, panic attack. Okay, so it's not always on, but it's being switched on and off frequently, okay, without a stimulus. Again, it's a biological malfunction of the fear response, okay? It's not staying on, but it's flipping on all the time and then going off. So it's kind of like it's, on, off, on, off, on, off. And that's what's happening here, okay? All right, so panic attacks, and the panic attacks just are unpredictable. They're random, but they just slip into these panic attacks at first without any type of symptom. Then what happens is they begin to fear the panic attacks and having them, and then you just kind of start this whole cycle over again, okay? But at first, the panic attacks seem random. They're not really a stimulus. You can't really associate them with anything. There's no pattern. You just are slipping into these panic attacks, and they're also having quite a few. So we're talking multiple per day. So, some of you might have had, so far in your life, you've had 3 panic attacks, and you're going to remember them if you have them, and those 3 instances, where these people might have, 5 to 7 a day, and sometimes can have just one long panic attack. So they kind of become the core of their existence. Okay, your life kind of then rotates around these panic attacks. Okay, so it is biological again. Fear response is broken, and then they are neurotic. Okay, because again, it's based on panic and fear. Okay, so panic disorder, anxiety disorder. This is learning target 8. Panic attack, random panic attacks without stimulus. And that is unpredictable at first. Had problems spelling there. Okay. All right, so those are kind of what most people, okay. This one is probably a little bit more well-known, specific phobia or phobic disorder, right? It is anxiety disorder. It is learning target number 8. Because again, learning target number 8, if we look at it, says discuss the major diagnostic categories, including anxiety disorders, okay? So there's that one. So number 8 on there is what we're doing, okay? And then, again, basically 6 through 9 are all just about categories of disorders that we're going to go through, okay? So again, since it's an anxiety disorder, at the core of it, it has to have a panic attack as one of its main symptoms. So this time, the people have panic attacks only when they come into contact with a specific item or thing that they are afraid of, okay? So, agoraphobia is the phobia of being outside. Coulrophobia is the phobia of clowns. Arachnophobia is the phobia of spiders. So I have to come in contact with the clown, the spider, open spaces for me to have the fear response. So other than that, I'm pretty good. I'm not in a constant state of panic, and I'm not having random panic attacks all the time. Panic attacks only come when I come into contact or think I'm going to come in contact with the stimulus, okay? So these are stimulus response, okay? So panic attack, one specific stimulus creates panic fear response, okay? So obviously you can see, again, if you go back to chapter 8, you can see a lot of operant and classical conditioning here. We do believe that phobias are mostly learned. They're learned from the environment. And usually there's a traumatic experience that occurs mainly in childhood, although they can happen later. And that kind of teaches us, and creates a stimulus response that locks into our mind, okay? And a lot of it is when you're a child, like coulrophobia, the phobia of clowns, is basically mostly found in people who perceived that they were being chased by a costume character at a party or when they were young. Now, when you're young and you feel like you're being chased, it creates a natural response, okay? And it doesn't even mean that you have to really be chased if you just get the perception, okay? If you remember going around playing tag and, Ghost in the Graveyard and all those games, even within the game, you knew you were going to be chased, but you can still start the fear response and panic if you're being chased. We associate that with different things, and then it kind of creates that traumatic experience. When I was I said this in the first live stream, but when I was in the clinical field and doing some supervision in groups, they were treating, the clinic that I was working at was treating a little girl who had a phobic personality. She just was developing a lot of phobias. So not here or here, but she was becoming afraid of a lot of things that would start the panic attack. And one of them was, she definitely was associating plainly anything that she felt like chased her. And I remember at one point they talked about like the barbecue grill on their back patio. They were out there eating. It's becoming pretty windy, and the wind kind of moved the barbecue grill maybe 3 feet, but it was in her direction, and she freaked out, and she thought the grill was chasing her. So it doesn't have to be it's really chasing. It can just be the perception of it. Okay, and now she doesn't go out on the patio, or she didn't go out on the patio. She was afraid of the grill. She even wind noises kind of freaked her out a little bit. So it doesn't have to naturally be chasing you, but just the perception of it can create the fear and the anxiety and the response. And then it's associated with something, okay? All right, the fear had manifested itself. And then you get to see her go through behavioral therapy, which is actually also kind of cool. So they kind of work with her to get over her phobia. Okay, and it is neurotic, right? Because again, it's based in fear. Okay, so specific phobia or phobic disorder, anxiety, the Sabi's learning target number 8, panic attack at the core. One specific stimulus creates the panic fear response. It's environmental, so we do believe that you learn this response, okay, basically through classical conditioning in your environment, and it is neurotic, okay? At the base, at the core of it is fear, okay? All right, so we will actually stop there, and those are kind of going to be the 3 main anxiety disorders that we talk about. The 2 that we're going to talk about tomorrow, obsessive-compulsive disorder and PTSD, used to be under anxiety disorders, but now they've kind of been pulled out, and they have kind of like their own little category under that, if you will, in which it's obsessive-compulsive and related disorders, and then trauma and stress-related disorders would actually be PTSD. So, but at the core, they're still going to be based on neurosis and anxiety. They just have different categories, okay? All right, any questions on the first 3? Again, I want to encourage you to read your book. You know, there's some great definitions, explanations, and stories. And then view the video clips that I have, because generally I try to keep movie trailers or whatever that actually show the disorders kind of in their true. So there's some really good videos in the assignment link on Canvas as well. Okay. Okay, any questions? We're good. Okay, all right. Well, we'll see everybody tomorrow as we kind of continue on. Have a good day.